Hey, Adam,
Geez,
one
why,
thing.
why do you think they called bumpers, Gary?
I don't know.
Because they come at the beginning, at the end, like bumpers.
Alex, you're a marketing guy. Do you like that design behind Paul? Does that logo thing look pretty cool to you?
Hey, I forgot to hit the record button.
Yeah, that's really professional, isn't it?
Well, this is a professional podcast.
I met her in a parking lot and was handed 2 little Yorkies. And the only person I knew that knew Yorkies was Paul. So I called Paul and said, Paul.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SoundCloud and subscribe today. Now it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sweet Talk, a weekly podcast here at Idaho State University's Continuing Education and Workforce Training. I am Paul Dickey, one of your hosts and the video instruction manager and apprenticeship coordinator here at Sweet. And as always, joining us today is Angie Wilhelm, our marketing director. Angie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. It's nice and rainy outside. I, at this point in the year, prefer that over the mounds and mounds of snow that I had to work my way through to get to work lately. So yes, I'm glad that it's a bit dreary and rainy versus snowy today.
Yes.
Joining us is Raylan Price, the interim director of continuing education and workforce training. How are you, Raylan?
I'm doing great. It's a fabulous Friday, so it can't get much better than that, right? Looking forward to a nice weekend. Yeah, and we're so excited today on our podcast to have Scott Stevens with us. He is one of our team members here at Sweet, and he has an exciting event coming up. Scott, I'm going to turn the time over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about your upcoming event.
All right. Well, it's the annual Construction Combine. It's coming up this year. It's going to be on April 10th and 11th, and we had a great event last year. We had some last second adjustments we had to do, where we moved it from the Home Depot parking lot inside because of weather. And but we had just such a great event last year. I think we had over 100 participants. We had well over 30 contractors that were involved. We built 11 sheds and gave them to area veterans. And yeah, it was just a really great event. We're looking forward to having another great event this year.
That's so great. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was going to say, so Scott, for some of the listeners who might not be familiar with the Construction Combine, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, and maybe kind of tell us a little bit about the history too, how it got started. And
yeah, you bet. So sorry, I had 2 questions. Paul, what was your question again? And then I just went right to thinking of Raylan's question, but
what it is and also the history.
Okay, what it is. Excuse me. Yeah. So I'll answer that question because that leads into Raylan's question. So what it is a 2-day event that just gives job seekers and high school students, just people that are interested in construction, an opportunity to get to experience it. It's a 2-day event. Like I said, the first day we focus on just training in different trades in the construction industry. And some of those trades are like framing, drywall, roofing. We even do plumbing and electrical. HVAC is part of it. Even one of my favorites is the excavation. We actually get a mini X, and kids get the opportunity to work with that. In fact, that's one of the most popular stations. Not everybody gets to do it because, and I can kind of explain why later, but it's always funny is that kids might be, I don't know, and they'll see what's going on over there and they'll be like, I want to go do that. And well, maybe after we're done or whatever. But it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like Disneyland for some of the kids. And so it's a really cool event. And then the next day, everybody comes back. We put them on a team, and they build a shed. They build a shed from the ground up, and then that shed is donated to a worthy veteran in the area. Which, I mean, all veterans are worthy, but we, donate them to a veteran. So
That's so
Great.
it's a
Very
great
great.
event. And just, follow along and answer Raylan's question, a little bit of history of why we do it. About 2000, I mean, it's a little bit of a long story. I don't know if you guys want the long version or if you just want the, just want the short version or whatever, but I'll just kind of start. It actually dates back to when I was in the Army as part of where this comes from. I when I took this job here at ISU, I had been talking to. We were trying to find just training that we could share with the community. Right? There's a lot of things at ISU. My job, my day job, if we call it, is to go out into the community and find. You talk to businesses about their training needs and like how to improve their businesses through training, and then come back to ISU and set that up. And so I was out doing that, and there was one training in particular that I had heard about on campus. It was called Lean Six Sigma, and in fact, his name is Dave O'Connell, and he is I don't know if he still works at the university anymore, but he was a trainer in Lean Six Sigma, and it's a great event. So going back to my military time, so while I was in Pakistan, my NCO, his goal was when he left the Army, when he retired out of the Army, he wanted to be a contractor or like build houses. And then he took all of these classes in Lean Six Sigma. And he and I stayed in contact. And he called me one day and we were talking about how things are going. And like he said to me, he said, Scott, how are you doing? Like he wasn't trying to like, one up me or anything like that as far as like income goes, but he's like, I'm doing pretty good with my business. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, I'm now. He was flipping homes. He was buying homes and flipping them. He's like, now I'm into like building homes. And he told me, he's like, I'll build a $300,000 home and I'll make $100,000 off that home. And I was like, wow, that's incredible margins. Like, how do you do that? And he's like, I implement this Lean Six Sigma that I took all these classes in the Army. I implemented that into my business. And he's like, I have my houses wired in. He's like, I know how much I'm spending. He's like, I'll haggle for a 1% discount on screws or whatever, because he's like, all of that will add up right over time. And so he's telling me this, and I'm like, that's genius. You're a genius. And so as he's telling me this, I'm like, well, and my dad he wasn't a home builder, but like he was in construction. He did remodeling and stuff like that. And well, actually he was a home builder. And like and so I knew a lot of contractors, and I knew a lot of contractors here in town. So like I was like, I want to see if we could set up this type of training for contractors. So I called up the Builders Association. Angie, Deloy Stewart and those guys. And so I called them up and I was like, hey, could I take you guys to lunch? I have this idea. I want to share it with you and see if we could have some type of partnership or some way of like promoting Lean Six Sigma training. And so I went to lunch with these guys. It wasn't with Deloitte, it was with Nick. Now his last name just eludes me. He runs Spring Creek Homes. And then Bybee, his first name a lot. Sometimes I forget all their names, but I went to lunch with them and a representative from the Builders Association. Well, they were representing the builders, but then somebody from like the executive committee or whatever. And so I started explaining this to them, and I was using these words like lean and Six Sigma, and like and they were looking at me like I thought a lean was a bad thing, right? Like they're thinking a lean on a home or whatever, and I was like, yeah, you're right. But I mean, and I was like, how do I explain this? I was like, it's process improvement. It's, you can really do well. My friend did it. I was trying to tell them the same story I just told you guys. And they were like, that's interesting, Scott. I mean, we would love to be able to get better margins in our building and stuff like that. But then they're like, but our main problem right now is not business or even streamlining our business. Our main problem is we just don't have any we don't have a hiring pool. There's nobody that has construction experience that we can hire the workforce. There's no training grounds. There's nothing. I was like, oh, well, that sounds like a really big problem. So we shifted gears in that meeting, and I just started asking questions. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what kind of person would you need? Like, what kind of skills would an entry level or a new hire in your business need? And I just started taking notes, and they started saying, how to read a tape measure was like the number one thing. And then like how to work with tools. Like, there isn't a lot of like, how to saw things or how to drill things, or, there just isn't, kids don't know how to use tools or didn't know how to use tools at the time. And so I was like, okay. So I wrote all this stuff down, and I went back to my office after that lunch, and I started thinking like, hey, what could we do here, right? How could we create some training around this? And I just started thinking like what it would look like. And then Gary, the former director, he popped his head in my office, and he's like, hey, how did your meeting go? And I was like, it went really well. They weren't really interested in lean training or process improvement training, but they're like, they need people. And he's like, why don't we do a ready-made workforce? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, do some training and then they can hire out of that pool. And I was like, that's an idea. And so I had a whiteboard. I was like marking out like my idea of like, because like it was like tools, right? That was kind of the main thing that the feedback that I got is like just learning how to use tools. And so I started like creating categories of tools, like mnemonic tools and power tools and hand tools and saws. That was kind of, I think that was the categories. And so I was like, and then I called all these people that I thought would be involved in that would want to be involved in something like this. Like I talked to Taro, I talked to a lot of other I went and talked to contractors about it. I went and at that time I go to church regularly, and I was at church, and in our church we have it's called stake conference. So you have multiple congregations that come together and meet. And I'll probably be in trouble with my church for saying, but it's a boring meeting. Like it's a terribly boring meeting. And I remember just like being like, and my kids, I had 4 kids that are all, I mean, they would rather be eating fire than be at this meeting, right? Like, and so they
not eating Cheerios,
eating Cheerios, raisins. We always would joke like, where we were sitting because there's raisins, right? Like and so or Cheerios or goldfish or whatever. And so my kids would go out. So my wife would take them out, or like I can't remember how old, or I think we had our baby like Claire, and so my wife took Claire out, and then one of my other kids started to act up. So I went out in the foyer as well. So while we're out there, my wife is talking to this other lady, and she's like, yeah, my husband works at Home Depot, and he actually is kind of been brought here to really help improve the situation at this local Home Depot. And like, you don't know what people are saying. Sometimes people they're like, oh, we're really important. I was like, oh, that's great, or something. And then so I'm out there, I'm like, that's really quiet. I was like, I need to talk to your husband. And I think it was her or it was him. I always teased him about this after I said, she's like, oh, we don't even get a discount. And I was like, no, that's not why I want to talk to him. I was like, I'm working on a project, and I wonder if Home Depot would maybe want to be part of it. And so, and I mean, almost after I said that, around this corner comes, his name's Brad Landon. He comes around the corner. He's this really gregarious, just full of life type person. He's, he has a kid, that's acting up too. And so we just kind of hit it off and became friends. And I was like, hey, I need to talk to you about Home Depot. And he's like, dude, I don't even get a discount. No, I kept teasing him about that. If he watches this, he's probably like, I hate that guy. No, he wouldn't say that. But like, and so so we get talking about it, and he's like, that sounds awesome. Yeah. And let's have a meeting. And so we met, and I explained my idea. And like, while I was explaining my idea, he's like, I think you should do it by trades rather than by tools. I think that would work better. So I was like, okay. And so I reorganized it into trades, and kind of, I mean, this is a very long story. Hopefully it's been entertaining though. But at at the end of the day, not the end of the day, at the end, we formulated this thing. We had a meeting. We brought in a bunch of stakeholders, if you will. We brought contractors in. We brought the school district in. We brought the reservation, so the show band tribes in through their tarot office. We brought in a ton of people, and we just said, "Hey, this is our idea. It'd be a 2-day event." I mean, we debated a lot, like how it would look. I was like, I don't want to build crap and then throw it away. That just bugs me. I don't want to do that. And so we were thinking like, can we build dog houses? Because we didn't know like how much, I mean, material's expensive, right? Like, and we didn't know how much we could, how much material, how much donation. But Brad's like, hey, you know what? I'll tell you this. The Home Depot Foundation loves veterans. They love the veterans, and they will open up their purse strings to help veterans. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. So we decided, and I think it was Brad that was like, hey, let's build a shed for them. And so we put that together because we're like, again, why build something and then just throw it away, right? Like we could build walls, right? We could mock up walls, but then we're just going to end up either breaking them apart and throwing them away, or people, it's just going to be a waste in a lot of ways. And so we came up with that, and it's worked out great. It's worked out great. It just like kind of took all of these different like entities that are happening throughout the community in a sense, and aligned them up and created something that was pretty impactful for our community. And that's the story of the Construction Combine. Like we try to line up all of the different things that we can line up to make things successful. In fact, as we started doing it, the second year we did it, no, excuse me, the first year we did it, I think, I was on a radio station explaining what we were trying to do, and we call it the Combine not because we're mowing hay or anything like that, but because the NFL in March does what's called their Combine, the NFL Combine, and athletes from all over the world or all over the country come to Indianapolis and are tested on how well they run and how well they jump and how strong they are, and like how their propensity to play in the NFL. And we thought this is kind of a similar thing. This is people from all over the state or all over our region can come and show their propensity to work in the construction industry. And so it's been really fun in that kind of thing. But we had, where I was alluding, we had somebody, I was explaining this on the radio on KISU. I'll put a shout out to them. And some lady called me up out of the blue. I put my number out there, and she's like, you need to have how did they put it? Like a health assessment, not a health assessment, but like, can't remember exactly how she put it, but it was like testing if you could actually work in construction, right? Like, can you bend over? Can you pick stuff up? Can you do these type things? And I was like, she's like, and our office, she was a physical therapist. She's like, our office will do it for free. We'll set it up. And so we're like, okay. And we're like, that sounds great. That sounds great. And so we tried to set that up, and we were less than successful at getting people to actually participate in that because it was the night before. And I think we tried that 2 or 3 times. And then I don't know exactly how it happened, but the women's prison were involved in like having some of the women that were preparing to re-enter civilian life go through, be part of the Construction Combine. And it was brought up in a meeting, and one of the dean, or like the chair of the nursing department, or somebody was in this committee when the Construction Combine was brought up in this meeting, and they gave her my contact information, and her name was Karen Neal, I think is her name. And she called me, and she's like, hey, how could we be part of this Construction Combine? And I was like, I know how you could be part of it. We need somebody to help us with the health end of this thing, because by that time the PT office, the lady that was working for the PT office, she had moved on. She got in a job actually back in Pennsylvania, and so we needed somebody that could kind of do a health assessment. And so I was like, we would love for the nursing to be involved and help us do a health assessment, and we'll talk about how it worked. And so they came on, and we tried to do like a really robust health assessment. the first year with them, and again, it didn't do very well. Like nobody wants to come the night before, which I totally understand. So we figured out, hey, how can we do it part of like, signing in, and so they've been part of that. And so it's just really cool. The thing is, and like I tell everybody when we're doing this event, it's like it's an inclusive event. Like I emphasize inclusive. Like I don't want to turn anybody away. Like people will be like, what if this or what if that? I'm like, here is what I say is I want anybody and everybody who wants to be there. Like if you don't want to be there, we don't want you there. That, I guess that's the qualifier. And so so if you're getting your arm twisted to be there, maybe twist back and don't come. But if you want to be there, we want you there. We want you to feel like you can walk in, and if you're like, I want to get a job in the construction industry, we want you to come in and participate and like I always say, and that goes for everybody. That goes for contractors, that goes for sponsors, that goes for you name it. We want you to participate. If you want to be involved in it, we want you to be involved in it. And like people sometimes, well, what can I do? Like, where do I go? Like, what was, and I'll, provide direction, obviously, like, hey, this is what I think would be really helpful. But I always tell people there are only 3 rules to the construction combine. That's it. 3 rules. But these are sacrosanct. And the first rule is it has to be safe. Everything we do has to be 100% safe. No, I mean, luckily, knock on wood, for the last 5-6 years, we've only had 1 incident, and I think he would be embarrassed if we shared what that incident was. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And so, but only 1. So knock on wood. I mean, but we take safety very serious. Like before every day, we do a safety brief. We then have a before every class and stuff like that, the contractors talk about what can hurt them, what to look out for. So that's the number 1. Number 2 is you can't interfere with training. And what we mean by that, and that's a universal thing, that's the principles. Like, and what I mean by that is like, don't get in the way of somebody else's training. That goes for the individuals that's participating, right? So don't horse around, don't be an idiot, don't do things that's going to take away from somebody else's training. And for a sponsor, like, hey, you can advertise however way you want to advertise, just don't interfere with the training. Like at the beginning, if you I tell sponsors all the time, like at the beginning of a training, if you want to say, hey, this is sponsored by XYZ framing or XYZ bank or whatever, you can do that and talk to them. Take 3-4 minutes at the beginning and just tell them like, hey, this is what's about our company, right? Why you should want to get involved, or why you should do business with us, or whatever you want to do. But then after that, you don't interfere with training. It goes back to rule 1, 2, just safety and stuff like that. And then the third thing, and it's kind of humorous, but and sometimes people, just don't be an a-hole. That's our number. Like, just don't be a jerk. There's no reason to get. I always tell people, if somebody needs to get upset, that's me. So come and lay your burdens at me. If there's something going on, if there's some type of disagreement, if there's something like that, we can fix it. But bring it to me, right? Bring it to me, or bring it to somebody. Don't be an a-hole to the other person, right? Like, just be like, hey, this is what's going on, whatever it is. But let's keep a congenial feeling throughout this entire event. And that kind of, again, goes back to what I said. It's like everybody is invited, which I know, like, not everybody gets along too, right? Like, I mean, we have to work those things out. But those are our 3 rules, and kind of a little bit of, the history about it, and how it's come together. We did our first one in 2018, and it was a hit. It was a hit. And then we did it again in 19. We were going to do it in 20, and then it got canceled. But then we picked it back up in 21. Pandemic was still going on. We still had to wear masks. I had to write a very robust safety plan to make it all,
Yes.
for people to feel comfortable with it. But we did it, and it was great. And we've done it ever since. And we've got loyal participants, from contractors to sponsors. Kids come back sometimes, like, that were that were 16 and now they're 18 and they're like, I love this. And so it's it's a really cool
Well, it's
event.
been a great journey from 2018 till 9. Congressional record was Construction Combine. That was pretty cool, and a story for another day, but that's pretty awesome. And we really, like you said, appreciate all of the work, from Scott, your team, all of the donors that come and give time and money to make this thing happen, because it is really important. It's a great thing for our workforce to give them some skills, and for employers to be able to see, kind of like that draft idea, right? To see some potential workers that they could maybe bring in and have at least a little taste of construction. The people would know that, yeah, I kind of like to do this when they get hired. So it's a great event. And thank you, Scott, for spearheading it again. And, really, you are the backbone behind this event. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we are actually out of time. That went by very, very
No,
quickly.
no,
I
It
think
was
I
so
talked.
fast.
I think I talked
It
for the
went
whole
by
time.
so, but you know where you're headed though, Scott. That's what's great about it. You know where you're headed. If you or anyone may be interested in coming to our Construction Combine, you can find more information on constructioncombine.org or on our website at cetrain.isu.edu. And I will now turn it over to Paul to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott. Scott, this construction combine is very important. Again, the construction industry is a lot of times not looked at from young people as a career option, and this gives them an opportunity to have a taste and see that there are career options out there in these fields. And I can't tell you how important this is for industry to have this as a way of introducing young people to these trades. And I do appreciate all the hard work that you do to put this together. Again, it goes by, each year seems to go by smoother, knock on wood. And that's because of all the hard work you do behind the scenes. And we just want to thank you for that. Raylan, thank you so much for joining us as always. I
Yes.
greatly appreciate it. Angie, can't do this without you. If you want to, Angie already mentioned our website, but again, let me repeat that. If you're interested in looking at any of our other offerings, cetrain.isu.edu. You can email us at cetrain@isu.edu, and you can give us a call at 208-282-3372. And again, this is our podcast that we use to reach out to the community and inform the community of events that are going on, and also other community of important people out there that we host. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We do appreciate it, and be safe out there.